if we're getting really woo woo, I believe that there's, infinite versions of reality. And now it's actually really cool because science is kind of catching up to this thought process, this theory. And, there was this Google, I think, quantum chip or whatever proved that we essentially live in a multiverse kind of things. Marvel, I guess, was right. And that's more on the esoteric side of things. But that is what I believe. I believe that there's infinite versions of reality. So if you're thinking about something, if you want to manifest something, it's because there's a version of you who has that. You
Mhm.
wouldn't want something unless it was possible for you.
Welcome, Olivia. Thanks for coming on the Hey Soul Sister podcast. We're so excited to dive into this conversation with you today.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. I love y'all's message and the love and light that you guys are sharing. This is very needed information for a lot of people. So I'm very excited to chat.
So, we really were inspired by your journey and your ability to speak to um, everybody on a spiritual level and that mindset. A lot of us think that mindset is it's a word that's broadly used, but there's so many different, elements to creating a life that you dream of through your mindset, but also through manifestation. And I know you do a lot of this self-embodiment work and becoming that best version of yourself.
Yeah.
So we really want to know what first sparked this journey of yours into mindset coaching and embodiment work.
Yeah, great question. I had I was kind of reintroduced to manifestation and mindset work in 2020. I think a lot of people were reintroduced to that around then as well. And I say reintroduced because I remember watching The Secret when I was a kid, and I think my mom showed it to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Manifestation's real." And throughout my life happened and I completely stopped believing in manifestation. And I ended up seeing the quote, "You have the power to create your own reality." This was in 2020. And I was really triggered by that. I was like, that's not true. We don't have any power over creating our reality. Some people are lucky, some people aren't lucky. But I figured, you know what? If that's true, I was very reluctantly kind of put myself into it because I was like, okay, if that's true, if manifestation's real, I might as well test it out and see if I can improve my life. Because if it doesn't work, then let's say I'm going to give myself 6 months to go all in and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, okay, fine, I just wasted 6 months, like whatever. But if it does work, I'm potentially changing the whole trajectory of my life. And so I decided to just go all in. Quickly realized that manifestation and the mindset self development journey like go very hand in hand. And I was kind of realizing, oh, okay, manifestation's real. The more that I, embody my future self, the more that I do the shadow work, the more that I change my mindset, the quicker my manifestations are coming. So I just like really, really, really went down a rabbit hole of self-development and manifestation. This was right before I moved to New York and ended up, having such an amazing experience in New York and manifesting so many cool things. And then like pretty quickly after I started doing the mindset work and the manifestation and my life started getting better and I started gaining more confidence and I, released any shame or embarrassment that I was holding on to. I was like, oh, I think I need everyone to know about this stuff. Like, I feel so good. I feel so much better than I ever thought I could. And I need everyone else to know about it. And so I just started talking about it to everyone that that I would see, my friends, my family. And then realized that mindset coaching is a thing. And I was like, okay, yes, that's what I want to do. And started working towards it after I had, a couple corporate jobs. I continued kind of working on it on the side and then ended up being able to go full time at the beginning of this year.
Wow. It's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I'm so curious because there's a few things that you touched on. Number one, shadow work. I'm like, ooh, can we go there for a minute? And then also the
Please.
second one too was like diving into a little bit of like the mindset stuff. But I think first I wanted to ask you, like, what does the shadow work look like for you when you're working with clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people ask, what shadow work looks like. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do shadow work. I think, people do some forms of shadow work like in therapy or just kind of having these realizations. Anytime you're looking at your patterns or looking at, your feelings within in general, I think that's kind of a form of shadow work. But typically what I do, for myself and for clients, if they're new to this work, is typically like journal prompts. shadow work prompts are kind of written in a way that help you really get to the root cause of why you feel these things, maybe why you have shame around something, maybe why you're worried about something. Maybe, it's just so crazy because, when you take the time to actually write down the answers to these prompts and just go a little bit deeper. There's this analogy I'm not even going to explain it very well, but it's just kind of saying that when you're trying to think about answers in your head, it might feel a little jumbled up, right? But if you actually
Uh-huh.
take the time to write it down and like put it on paper, it really helps to organize your thoughts
For
and go a
sure.
little bit deeper. Yeah, that's typically what I do with my clients and for myself is shadow work journal prompts. And you can find so many prompts, on Google, on Pinterest, or you can actually ask like ChatGPT to create custom shadow work prompts for you based on whatever you're going through. If you're into chat.
I think you're
Yeah,
so
and
right.
you talked like, when you were talking about your journey of, like, "I'm gonna try this manifestation thing out, like,
Uh,
let me what do I have to lose? I'm gonna dedicate 6 months." And then, lo and behold, kinda changed your life, right? And where you are today. But because you really work with clients and you work with people at that mindset level, and Sherry said it earlier, mindset, that word is really generally kind of thrown around. And so I'm really curious to know, what does mindset work entail?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I was kind of going back and forth of like, what should I call myself? Like, should I call myself a manifestation coach, a wellness coach, a mindset coach? And I ultimately, I'm always rebranding and evolving. But at the moment, I'm calling myself a mindset coach because the mindset, like your mindset really does it encapsulates everything, right?
Mhm.
Mindset, if you're trying to manifest something, it ultimately comes down to your mindset. Your mindset is also very, correlates with your body, right? So I do a lot of like nervous system regulation work and somatic work with my clients and for myself. And ultimately that all affects your mindset. And so that's something that I really believe and I really teach is that truly everything in our life really comes down to our mindset, comes from our mind. And things like our nervous system actually does affect our mindset. What we're able to manifest comes from our mindset. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but I think I call myself a mindset coach because it really does kind of touch a little bit of everything. And if you're wanting to change anything in your life, you kind of need to change your mindset first.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that a lot of us are afraid sometimes of diving deep into those shadows. And so for me, I think that journaling is hard because I don't know what to write. And so those
Mhm.
prompts really help a person kind of really target what it is they're feeling and why they're feeling it. Would you say that's like taking them back to childhood triggers or the way maybe something that happened to them in the past that's causing them to create that cycle in the present and how you make them more aware of those things through that mindset coaching? Would that be something that you do with clients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the journaling, the shadow work prompts literally really helps you do that in a sense.
Mm.
I think everyone what I believe really is that everyone does know the answer. Like
Mhm.
everyone knows their own, truth, knows their own answers of what they should quote unquote should be doing or what they need to heal or whatever it is. I think the journal prompts, like you're saying, sometimes people do have trouble knowing what they're supposed to be journaling, right? Kind of you're like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So the prompts really help you, unpack things and shadow work and our psyche is crazy because even if it was something like maybe in second grade, some kid in your class told you were ugly or something like some little boy and he was flirting, whatever. But internalized that and made yourself feel,
Yeah.
not good enough or not pretty enough or whatever it is. And that little moment, because it affected you so much when you were a kid, it kind of has been festering and like building up and making you believe that for years and years and years and years. So I think shadow work is just so helpful because it helps you get to those root causes of like
Mhm.
why, like, when was the first time I felt XYZ? And then you kind of go back to that moment and you're like, oh, wait, I thought that was such a big deal. It felt like such a big deal. And I felt like it was so triggering and it felt like, it was holding up so much space in my psyche, my subconscious for so many years. And now I'm realizing it's actually not that big of a deal. Obviously, we all have some things that are huge deals and it's very traumatic and things like that. But a lot of these things, you feel like our body feels like it's a big deal because we haven't looked at it and we haven't given it attention for so many years. And then you finally do. Like you're saying, sometimes we're scared to go within, sometimes we're scared to face our shadows and face our internal stuff. But it's actually 95% of the time not as scary as you think it's gonna be, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I use this
Mhm.
analogy of, like, it's like you're standing on an edge of a cliff and standing on the edge of the cliff with your back, to the cliff, and you can't see what's down there, and it's like, okay, let me just like, lean and like fall off this cliff and just see what happens and trust the universe. And it ends up you fall and it ends up being like there's a net 1 foot down, so like you're fine every single time. You just have to kind of like make the leap and trust,
Yeah.
and every single time you actually are like caught, it's not as scary as you thought it was going to be. It's really not that bad. And yeah, that's what I kind of help my clients like, go towards. And what I really, 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 really believe, and from my experience, if you know anything about what I talk about, my brand, I talk about being delusional and dreaming big and remembering that you really can manifest anything. And so what helps me and what helps my clients is that when you have a really big delusional goal, like when you get really clear on this future self version of you who's living her dream life and like living just everything you've ever wanted, that kind of makes it easier to take the steps to go within, because you're like, okay, that's
Right.
worth it. My dream life, like going after my dream life, like living this wonderful, luxurious life, whatever it looks like for you, that when you have such a big goal, it kind of makes it worth it to do the inner work, even if it feels a little bit scary.
I
I
have a
really love
follow-up to the
that. I think there's so much.
manifestation part, sorry. The manifestation. I really wanna ask this question because every day I kind of ask it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people ask this question about manifestation. Is manifestation magic, or is it something like you said with the mindset with are we looking for evidence? Are we looking for the
Mhm.
things because we're programming our brain? Or is
Mhm.
it just something that magically happens like The Secret? You know what I mean? So I think that's where a lot of people get very confused about manifestation. So in your words, in a few sentences, whatever that looks like for you, what is
Uh-huh.
manifestation?
Yeah, people do ask that all the time, and I think it's like it depends. Yeah, okay. So let me answer. What is manifestation? What manifestation to me is essentially bringing something from your mind, from your imagination, from your thoughts into reality. And that seems like a little bit more of like the magic definition. But, neuroscience and even quantum physics, there's so much science that actually proves like how manifestation works. I think to answer your question, like I like how you're saying, is it magic or is it mindset? Is it, training our brain of what to look for, things like that? I genuinely think it's kind of a mix of both.
Mhm.
I think that there are some of the magic side of things that is kind of unexplainable almost if you don't believe in some type of like divine higher power outside of us. It kind of does seem like magic. I think yeah, I definitely think it's kind of a mixture of both almost. I think that, things like the law of assumption or the law of attraction are really, really real. And, as we are raising our vibration, raising our frequency, we start aligning to, a different version of reality. If we're getting really woo woo, I believe that there's, infinite versions of reality. And now it's actually really cool because science is kind of catching up to this thought process, this theory. And, there was this Google, I think, quantum chip or whatever proved that we essentially live in a multiverse kind of things. Marvel, I guess, was right. And that's more on the esoteric side of things. But that is what I believe. I believe that there's infinite versions of reality. So if you're thinking about something, if you want to manifest something, it's because there's a version of you who has that. You
Mhm.
wouldn't want something unless it was possible for you. So that's kind of like on the magic side, right? Because
Yeah.
it's more like big picture, it's more out there. You're raising your frequency, you're aligning to different versions of reality. Cool. But then on the neuroscience part of it, if we're talking about our mind really only sees what we are programmed to see. Right. So our reticular activating system, whatever our beliefs are, that's where the subconscious reprogramming comes in. Big part of what I do with my clients and talk about is, whatever your beliefs are, your brain is always working overtime to prove your own beliefs. So it's like if you have a belief that money's hard to make or love is really hard or you're not worthy or whatever, your brain's literally just trying to prove your own beliefs correct. So it's gonna be like, okay, yeah, like let me remind you. Okay, yeah, let me remind you of all the times that you messed up, that someone like gave you a weird look or make I'm gonna make sure that you see that in your day-to-day life or whatever, versus if you have a belief that money is easy to make or that you have a belief that you are amazing and love's easy or whatever it is, your brain's also going to prove that to you, and our brain is so powerful and so crazy that even if something
Mm.
was right in front of our face, like an opportunity right in front of our face, in our reality, but we didn't believe that it was possible for us or we didn't, have a belief that we could experience that, our brain quite literally could just kind of not show it to us or make us forget
Mm.
or not pay attention to that. So I definitely think it's kind of a mixture of both. And for anyone who doesn't believe in manifesting, if you want to research the science side of things, if you want to go a little bit further in the neuroscience or the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, great. That's going to prove to you that manifesting is real. But if you're not a sciencey nerd like me, I would just say, hey, try it out. Try it out. Like make a list of, some things that you want to manifest or ask for, a sign or, make a vision board or something like that. And just give, again, like I did, give yourself a few months and just go all in and just test it out. And then I promise every single time you're gonna end up, manifesting something. You're gonna end up being pleasantly surprised. And then you're gonna fall down the manifestation rabbit hole of realizing this is real and continuing to level up and yeah.
There's so many things, like, there's so many, like, lights going off in my brain right now, and I'm like, "Wait, which question I wanna ask her first?"
Right?
So, okay, so let's go back to infinite versions of ourselves and
Yeah.
infinite versions of reality because this is my jam. I'm so with you on that, girl. Like, I 100% believe in that. So, and I know that you talk about this in your content, like your future self, like say an alternate version of reality of yourself or your future self will almost like give you like these glimmers, these little like whispers of something to call you into that reality. And I want to ask you something because and this is kind of like personal experience, but also I can imagine that there are other women out there who are probably can relate to it on some level. So I was actually talking to Sherry just yesterday and I told her for the first time. I've never told anybody this. And I told her this for the first time. I said, for whatever reason, over the last few years, even longer, I've always had this feeling in me that I'm meant to build, scale, and sell businesses and invest in businesses.
Mm, yes.
But because where I come from, because of the identity that I've been so anchored in, like the Whitley who shows up and does the purpose driven work, the Whitley who shows up, who does the mindset stuff, who helps women, so it's like this identity that I have like carved out for myself in my life's path. So when I get those little whispers, we'll say those little thoughts, those little feelings, it's very easy to just shut it down because it's like, well, that doesn't line up with who I am. And it seems very far fetched. I don't know really a whole lot about, acquiring businesses, selling businesses, investing in businesses. But for whatever reason over the years, I've always had these like feelings of wanting to learn financial education. So like financial investments, learning taxes and things like that. But then I always come back to what I'm used to, right? So when I told Sherry this yesterday, she was like, "What?" She's like, "This doesn't even sound like you at all. Like, this is so weird to hear you say this because I would never imagine that about you." But I was at
Mhm.
an event the day before yesterday, and the man who was on stage talking about this kind of stuff, like literally, there was like a fire burning inside of me. It just felt like I feel like I'm meant to do this. Like, I feel like I'm meant to step into that type of work one day. And so because I'm so like anchored in my identity and like I've already had this vision of like how my life is supposed to be, I have very much like shut that out. So I'm really curious to know like when you talk about the infant versions of yourself and your future self will kind of give you like little like breadcrumbs to call you toward something. Do like how can I explain this and how does this correlate and any other women out there who may have felt these like little whispers or nudges from certain things that kind of feel like I wonder what that would be like to do that. I'm really curious to like just dig in and pick your brain about this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, first of all, that's so exciting. I mean, I don't know too much about you, but I'm like, I can definitely see that for you. Like that sounds really, really cool. I think that that is like such a kind of specific niche and such a specific feeling that you're feeling that it's like definitely destined for you. I'm like, that feels really, really right. Cause I feel like there's not too many people that would like have that exact desire. Cause like, I mean, for me, I want to be, a mindset coach and very like kind of specific. And I know that's like my calling. And for you, I think that's kind of another like, very kind of specific calling. So it's like, yeah, that sounding like that's your highest path. That's your highest timeline. That's so cool for you to realize that. I think that, okay, there's a lot of things because one, being anchored to an identity is so real. And yeah, it's so real. And I feel like, for me, it was almost like didn't want to have to explain to everyone. I didn't want to have to like force everyone to see a new version of me or to like, match this new or have to release their old thoughts about me or their old ideas about
Mm.
me. I almost like was like, okay, well, I don't want to make everyone else have to think about me in a different way. But that's definitely not a good enough excuse to not go after your goals and not, change your identity. I think that definitely it's worth it. I think that other people catch up to your new identity like every single time. Like everyone around you will eventually catch up to this new identity of you. And realizing that you have this resistance of stepping into this new life or stepping into this new existence or this new identity because our brain and our body just doesn't like change. Our brain and our body
Mm.
literally is wired to avoid change, to avoid, change, like changing anything about us, going out of our comfort zone or trying something new because, when we were evolving millions of years ago or whatever, that like change could mean death. So it's like we are wired to stay the same because that means predictability and predictability means safety. And so, but now in the 21st century, thankfully, going changing your career doesn't actually mean death. It doesn't
Yeah.
actually require you to not be safe, but our body just feels like it does. And so, trying anything new is going to feel weird. You're going to have resistance at first. You maybe won't be great at it at first, but that's anything. That's literally any new skill, any new hobby, posting on social media, for example. Like none of us are like good at anything right away, but you just kind of have to continue to do it. And, for you, I think coach mode coming out of like, okay, figure out like get a really, really big delusional goal. So it's like, okay, you want to own part or 10 different companies or more, and have this big evaluation of millions and millions of dollars or whatever it is and get really, really clear on like, you don't have to like figure out every single detail, but just get an idea of something and make it really, really big. And then you're going to have a lot of motivation to start going after this goal. You're gonna be like, okay, you're going to start going to more conferences or learning more things and starting to put yourself out there. And so that's one piece. And then another piece is, if every time we try something new and we're shifting our identity or whatever, you might start feeling like a little bit of imposter syndrome because you're like, what am I doing?
Mm.
But I yeah, what I learned about imposter syndrome is that actually just kind of shifting your mindset around it because just kind of start to think that imposter syndrome is a good thing. Because imposter syndrome just means that you are like putting yourself in rooms where people know more than you. And it's like, hey, that's actually cool. Like you're in that room too, so imposter syndrome is kind of a good thing because that means you're stretching. Like that means you're stretching, that means you're growing, and that means that you're like, going out of your comfort zone and putting yourself around or putting, yourself in places where other people might be the experts or things like that. But it's like, hey, you're still there. Like you actually do deserve to be there. Like that's okay if you're not perfect at it or whatever. And just remembering that there's a lot of very successful, rich, powerful people in this world. They're not special. It's like, hey, everyone just kind of gets what they want these days by having audacity and just like believing in themselves. And
Mhm,
it doesn't
mhm.
mean that it doesn't mean that someone who has something that you want is like better than you or any type of being special. It just means that they believed in themselves and they asked for what they want. So yeah, so that was a lot of information, but I hope there's pieces that
No,
help.
it's amazing, it's perfect because I think that it goes to show that any of our, like, the women, our listeners who maybe have ever felt or experienced that like feeling of like, I wonder what would happen if I went down this path. I
Mhm.
wonder at some point throughout your journey, you get these little whispers. Sherry and I, we call them like breadcrumbs, right? From the universe. Right? Like you were saying, it's like future versions of ourselves that are calling us toward something that we're meant to step into, right? And
Mhm.
so I think you touched on a lot of really great points and really just being able to be delusional, put that big vision out because it's going to motivate you to start taking that action. And just remember that like everybody kind of goes through imposter syndrome and just really having that belief in yourself and then believing that you're worthy and you're deserving to being able to be in those rooms and to step into your desires. So thank you so much on that, Olivia. I appreciate
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
of
that's great.
course.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, one more thing because I'm sure I was gonna mention this at some point, but, you know, stepping into a new identity actually 2 more things, because 1, if you start identifying like, if you start identifying as, a business, I don't know what it would be like, owner, consultant, investor, whatever it is, if you start identifying as that, it might feel weird at first or any new identity that you're doing, start
Yeah.
identifying as that version of you before you feel like you are. Like, for me, when I started coaching, I had such imposter syndrome around coaching, but I literally started identifying as a coach. I started affirming to myself that, I'm an amazing coach or whatever. And then kind of stepped into that identity. Like I didn't wait necessarily until I felt like a good coach to start, embodying that energy. I started, identifying as that first and then, everything kind of catches up. So our brain too is always trying to, make us act and behave in the way that we are identifying as. So if you start identifying as this new version of you, or if you're trying to, maybe get fit or like move your body more or whatever, if you start identifying as "Hey, I'm someone who moves their body. Hey, I'm that person. I am someone who goes to the gym or is fit or takes care of their body or whatever. If you start identifying as that, your body's gonna be like, okay, well, yeah, of course we have to go to the gym. We're not have to, but of course we're gonna go to the gym. Of course we're gonna go on a walk today. And I remember doing that when I was trying to get more consistent with like moving my body. I just started being like, yeah, I'm just the type of person who moves their body every single day, like no matter what. And it doesn't even feel necessarily like a chore anymore. It just feels like something that I do. So if you start identifying as that, that's one piece. And then the second part that I wanted to mention is it might feel scary, stepping out of your comfort zone or identifying as something new or putting yourself out there or whatever. It might feel scary, but doing the scary thing, I genuinely believe is like one of the fastest ways to quantum leap to level up. It might yeah, doing the scary thing, whether that's, identifying as something else or for me, I always use the example of like posting on social media. I know that's scary for a lot of people. But doing that or, maybe even asking for more money. I've been scared to like ask for a raise, back when I had a corporate job, but I did it and it worked and it leveled me up. So it's like following your fear is a really, really good way to quantum leap and to level up your life. And for me, I know that now. Like I know that for a fact. So it's like anytime I feel scared to do something or I feel like a little bit of resistance or I'm like, this is freaky. I just do it. I'm like, okay, well, I know it's gonna help me. So let's just get it over with. I'm so, dedicated to achieving my dreams. Like my dreams are so big and like so cool that I'm like, let me just do whatever I need to do. Fuck it. Like, oh, sorry.
You're making fear your friend. That's what it sounds
Yes,
like. Yeah,
exactly.
when you take that action and like you said, making fear your friend, like
Mhm.
that being the quickest way that you quantum leap. So when you're stepping into that new identity and like you said, you're embodying, you're acting as if you already are the person who already has the thing and is already doing the thing. And when you start to do that, you're like overriding the programming, right? The programming that operates in the subconscious. But for people who are, and I think for a lot of women come up against, and you mentioned this earlier, like with the shadow work, identifying different triggers, identifying different wounds and things like that, that really kind of goes with us and weaves into our identities as these subconscious beliefs and they operate in the background, right? And so what happens is when someone chooses to level up or chooses to step into something new or something unknown and unfamiliar, those subconscious beliefs running in the background with them not even really knowing most of the time, unless you're working with a coach or you're aware of these things, can oftentimes self sabotage or keep you from actually stepping into the thing, right? So, my question would be Showing up and acting as if is one way that you can start to override the subconscious blocks. But when you really go in deeper, things that come from trauma and like some really hard experiences that some people experience in life that really affect maybe their self-worth, affect their relationship with money. How do you work with people at that deeper level to really help them to quantum leap and to step into their desired identity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that with my experience, the deeper rooted feelings of like, yeah, not feeling worthy or not feeling, like in a sense, maybe your parents were doing the best that they could, but in some way as a kid, you didn't feel like you were, loved in the right way or things like that. That really can go so deep, and like you're saying, it 100% can kind of like run our life or become the lens, in which we see the world. That's how I describe, our subconscious beliefs. It's like the lens in which you see and interact with the world, right? I think
Right.
that, kind of go deep. I do think the shadow work really helps with a lot of those things. I know the shadow work really helped me in a sense, because I definitely, I grew up in kind of like a chaotic, untraditional childhood, and there was things that made me feel not good enough. It made me feel like I had shame around things that I did not need to have shame around or whatever, or embarrassment or um, that type of thing. And shadow work really, really did help me, and it's helped a lot of my clients. I also think like inner child healing is so, so, so powerful and has helped a lot of people, because that again, our inner child, whatever happened in your childhood, again, there's sometimes people or parental figures maybe didn't mean to traumatize you or hurt you or make you feel not good enough and things like that. But as a kid, we internalize things and we make it feel like it's our fault, or it's carried along with us for years and years and years. So the inner child healing is really, really helpful to kind of like reparent your younger self, your inner child. If we want to like go kind of woo woo for a second, I also believe that like time isn't real in a sense. So I do kind of this is more out there, it's more woo woo, whatever. I don't have science. I don't
It's
have science
okay.
proof for this.
It's okay. Carrie and I
But
are all with
yeah.
woo-woo. It's all good.
Okay.
It's welcome here.
Yeah. But I always kind of talk about this, when we're talking about inner child healing, because I'm like, okay, if whether it's some exercises that I do is, writing a letter to younger self or doing like an inner child healing meditation where typically, you kind of get into that meditative state or the visualizing state and go back to like a moment in your childhood or like an age of yourself when you were younger or whatever, and kind of tell your younger self what you needed to hear, telling your younger self that you are worthy of love, or that, you are going to be okay, or that you're safe, or whatever that you needed to hear when you were younger. And from my experience, I really feel like when you do that, when you're like going back and talk to your younger self, it really it's kind of like you are talking to a younger version of you, and then it ends up sticking with you, because it's like I've come out of those like inner child meditations, and I'm like, oh yeah, the things that I just told my younger self, like in my imagination, I genuinely feel like I kind of heard that when I was a kid, and it kind of healed a lot of things inside of me. And yeah, that's definitely been the case for a lot of my clients, and a lot of people that I know have done inner child healing. It's like, doesn't have to your younger self is kind of like still still an entity. It's still a thing in the realms of infinite versions of reality, of time's not real or whatever. So
Right.
it's like you really can go back to that version of you and tell yourself whatever you needed to hear as an adult. And it's like, as an adult, you
Mhm.
you logically know, you're like, okay, yeah, I didn't actually I didn't need to feel like I wasn't good enough. I didn't need to feel like I didn't deserve love. And you can kind of reparent yourself. And I think
Mm.
that's so, so, so healing for so many people. And there's been a lot of people or my clients that were very hesitant. They're like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, you're paying me, so you have to do it. I'm just kidding. But, they end up doing it, and they're like, wow, that was actually so helpful. A lot of people cry when they're doing that, because it's like, yeah, your younger self is
Yeah.
still real, and there's still a little version of you who needs to hear that. And it's really, really, really powerful. So I don't know if I answered your question, but those are some ways.
You
So
did.
for this stuff is so interesting to me because like we talked about earlier, journaling and all that stuff. But then also when you talk about childhood healing, like inner child healing, and that being a version of you that you get to speak to. But like as a child, we are in a place where all of this feels normal and truth. And so when we grow older, we take that programming with us as truth. And so we
Yeah.
have to reprogram that truth as that's a lie. This is the truth, right? Is what you're saying. One thing that had helped me personally, and I don't know, Whitley and I did this together. It was a breathwork class that we did last year. And
Mhm.
I actually went in there with something that was happening, like the intention of clearing or healing something that was happening to me now, okay, in this reality or in this time. When I went into that, my childhood stuff started to come up, things that triggered me. And I
Yeah.
didn't intend for that, but it came up. But when I cleared that things shifted, and I didn't go in with that intention. So obviously there's something that we take in this current reality that's tied to that. And we have to heal that root. So we have
Mhm.
to go back to
Mhm.
that root. So that makes so much sense to me personally, because I feel like I've transformed in the last year and a half. And I also want to talk about the subject of money because I think it's such a big thing people want to talk about.
Mhm.
The money lack mindset, because growing up, my parents were always scarce, scarcity, money scarcity. I would always feel like I'd hoard money, save money. Even now, I feel like I never have enough money. Even if I have a lot of money, if I make more money, it's like, nope, I need more. And so
Mhm.
that's a lack mentality, right? Because you feel like it could leave you at any moment. So for somebody who is dealing with, they're struggling with the money mindset part, changing that lack mentality into like, I'm protected, I'm safe, money's flowing, money's just energy, all of that. Like, how do you work with somebody who has always had that subconscious belief that they're lacking in that department?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's definitely a very relevant topic for so many people. Just quickly, I'm so glad that you brought up the breath work because I didn't even say that because when we're talking about healing and removing these really deep-rooted fears and trauma and stuff, our body really is so key for that and like the somatic work. So I'm so glad you brought up that the breath work. And there's a lot of somatic stretching or things like that, like so the somatic work because yeah, you really can be doing a lot of like mindset things and doing the shadow work and doing things in your mind. But then if you're not dealing or like, moving or, releasing or
Yeah.
kind of helping your body release that energy or whatever
Yeah.
and the stored up emotions in our body is so important as well. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And in EFT tapping is also something that's really powerful for a lot
Yes.
of people.
I've been doing
Yeah.
that. And
Good. Oh, it's
I just
such
make up my own stuff. I'm like, "Na, na, na, you are abundant. Money's coming
yes.
every day."
Yes. That's great. That's so
It
great.
helps. It helps.
EFT, yeah, EFT tapping I think is like I like using the word like cheat code. There's cheat codes
Yeah.
that we can use to like level up our life, level up our mindset, get better at manifesting. And I think EFT is definitely like a cheat code. So
Yeah.
so glad you guys have been doing that. But yeah, the money mindset. Well, what I do with money mindset is there's so many deep rooted beliefs that a lot of us were taught, about scarcity or
Right.
about, asking for too much. Like that's something that's super common is
Yeah.
people feeling like they shouldn't ask for too much or like, the feeling like they're greedy or things like that. And that's a big one because again, so many people were taught that. And I think that was, kind of like that was kind of intentional from society for
Yep.
us to think that we should play small or think that, it's not okay for us to like live an amazing life. And that's one of the first things that we have to kind of tackle and remove and stretch people's and expand people's mind because it's like, hey, actually, when you, I guess like there's so many like there's so many money mindset beliefs that you kind of have
Mhm.
to unpack. Is one realizing that like when you are getting what you want, whether that's abundance or money, it doesn't mean that it's like taking away from other people. So that's like kind of the first thing because I know, people who there's so many like good-hearted like spiritual people who care. It's like you're good-hearted, you care, like you want everyone in the world to be rich or to have money or to have their basic needs met or whatever and you're just like a good-hearted person. So it feels like you're taking away from other people. So that's kind of the
Mhm.
first thing where it's like, hey, you actually aren't taking away from someone else if you are having more money. And then two, realizing that, yeah, it's actually okay. And it's actually a good thing for you to get what you want. Hey, it's actually great for when every single person, like, gets what they want, like, their true soul's desire, I genuinely believe it helps the entire world. Like, when you get
Yeah.
what you want, you're helping the world, and, if you think about it kind of like a puzzle piece, it's like, okay, well, if get more money and then you're gonna buy this, local businesses, whatever, and then they're gonna do it, and it's like you can kinda think about it that way in, like, the little butterfly effect,
Yep.
and then kind of just yeah, but then zooming out more of like, uh esoteric type of way, I really do believe that when you get what you want, you're raising your vibration, you're
Yeah.
able to help other people raise their vibration. So with money, it's like, hey, we actually need much more good-hearted people having a lot of money. And I think that was a cool realization for me to have because I've been doing a lot of money mindset work, reading books like Think and Grow Rich or You're a Badass at Making Money, or there's a really, really good book. I think it's a little bit newer or at least getting more popular now called Love Money, Money Loves You. And
Hmm.
that's a really, really, really great book kind of talking about it's written in a way where it's like the consciousness of money. And it's like, hey, you've thought I've been evil. Like you thought, the world, like whatever, but it's actually, maybe it's because not the right people have been having money. But it's also talking about kind of this new era of money and finances and abundance. And I think we really are entering this new era of good-hearted people having more money and,
Mhm.
good things happening with money. And we're shifting the narrative of thinking that, money is evil
Yeah.
into, wait, actually, we can literally do so much good. Like if good-hearted people had the majority of the money in this world, like there would be world peace. Like everyone would be able to eat. So it's like really kind of shifting our mindset in that sense, I think is important. Shifting the mindset of like, hey, it's actually not greedy for you to like
Mhm.
get what you want, for you to have more money. Feeling like you never have enough, I think that kind of comes from, yeah, probably, from your childhood, feeling like always saw your parents needing to either whether they actually needed to or not, like they felt like they always had to like, hoard money or
Yeah.
hold on to it, or you were told that obviously I think the number one is like money doesn't grow on trees. So many people are taught like money doesn't grow
Yeah.
on
Oh, yeah.
trees, like yeah, that type of thing. So the shadow work, again, like I talk about shadow work all the time, but like shadow work is like one of the main things that I do with people to make sure that they are kind of getting to the root cause of when they picked up these beliefs and kind of rewiring into their mind, hey, actually, money's safe. That's another huge one where our nervous system, money I think is a unique type of energy. Everything's energy. So like
Yeah.
but I think money is a unique, like highly charged energy. And so a lot of times when people actually when people don't have money, the nervous system is freaking out. But then when people do have money, the nervous system is also freaking out. And so that's where the nervous
Yeah.
system regulation really, really, really comes into play. Even like, at the beginning, like not having money, but as you're getting more money, the nervous system regulation actually, like, I feel like even becomes more and more important because maybe you feel like you're not, like you're gonna mess everything up or you're gonna, yeah, if you end up like losing some money or
Yeah.
spending it in a bad way, our nervous system freaks out a little bit and kind of feels like it's never going to come back. So yeah, it really does come down to kind of again like reparenting yourself, like rewiring new beliefs into your mind, feeling okay asking for more. And I think with my my uh brand, I guess, of being delusional, it's like, hey, when you start getting really big delusional goals of like, however many hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, whatever that kind of like makes you like tense up a little bit, that's where that you're kind of stretching your comfort zone, you're stretching your upper limit. And it's like, in my experience, you stretch that and it's like it feels a little bit weird at first, feels a little bit scary at first, but then you kind of like sit with it, you
Mm.
breathe through it, you keep visualizing, you start to normalize that amount of wealth or that amount of abundance or whatever your manifestation is, you start to normalize it and then it starts to feel like more safe, in your body or in your mind. So
Yeah.
those are kind of, I guess, some of the money mindset beliefs I try to take my clients through. I think those are the common ones of not feeling like they can ask for more or feeling like they're
Charging
gonna
someone too much money too sometimes, like,
yes,
your value, like, I think that's a big one for some people. Like, they think,
totally.
"I should undercharge because, they don't I feel like I want it to be affordable." So what you're doing is basically putting yourself down here and giving to them, but what you're
Yes.
saying is, like, giving like, the energy with money and other people is so important because what we need to be doing is treating money as that type of, like, vibrational energy. like how it's helping us as all as a collective. And
Yeah.
I even said this on the podcast and I said, I invest in stuff like stocks and stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's going there, I feel like it's growing, but it's like moving around, right? It's like
Mhm.
money is going to different businesses and different people and it's coming back to me, right?
Yeah.
So I like to like EFT tap myself into that. I'm
Yes.
like, yeah, I am rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And with abundance too, one of the best ways to manifest more money from my experience, more abundance, is being so, so grateful for the ways that you are abundant, like,
what
even if it's not
yeah.
monetarily, but, like, you could literally be like, "I'm abundant, in air, in clean air or clean water," or, like, friends, smiles, laughter. I'm always like, "Wait, we literally have, like, billions of dollars worth of information in our iPhones or, like, in your
Well,
phone." So it's like we actually really are so abundant, especially if, we
Yeah.
see what's going on in the world. It's like, "Hey, if you are in a country where you're safe, you're so abundant." Like, we take so many things for granted, and that kind of sometimes leads to if you're in the mode of, like, taking things for take quote, unquote, "taking things for granted," or, like, not seeing the abundance around you, you can get more and more and more physical
Yeah.
money, physical cash, and
Mhm.
you're gonna still feel like you're not abundant. But, like, if you start really training your brain to seeing the abundance around you, you're gonna start manifesting more money, and then you're gonna feel safer with that money. You're gonna start appreciating it more, and then it's just it's gonna get better and better and better.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And it's interesting because, as I've been sitting here and listening to you speak, Olivia, there really are so many. It's not like there's mindset work. Yes, everything kind of like starts with the mind, but it's like there's so many different components that all work together as a unit. So like we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about doing that shadow work. So like the mindset is all about like what you believe, right? And then doing a little bit of that shadow work to getting deeper and understanding, where some of the beliefs, where do they come from? Where are some of those blocks that are potentially, where do they come from? And then we talked a little bit about somatic work, right? So like releasing emotion, releasing energy from the body that's been
Mhm.
stored or trapped there for however long. And then you talked about nervous system regulation. So when you actually start to get these things, it's how do you start to feel safe that it's not going to get ripped away or that the worst case scenario is going to happen. So it's like there's so many different little pieces that kind of
Yeah.
fit that work
Mhm.
together. And, I just yeah, it's really interesting to see how it works because I think that when we have the knowledge and we have the self-awareness, then everything is like so much easier to then start to shift and change. So, thank you so much for sharing on all of these things. It wasn't just one thing, and you shared on so many different things that I think, yeah, are just so key and so important to really understand. So, thanks again, Olivia. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Do
of
you wanna
course.
share a little bit about your podcast real quick? And then, also where to find you and what you're up
Yeah.
to, what others
Yeah.
can get from you, and,
Yeah.
we'll put it in the show notes here.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are amazing interviewers, and I love your, point of view on so many things. And this was great. I also just quickly I didn't, like, get to mention this, but I like to simplify, the mindset manifestation journey, and what I kind of run my clients through is called my, like, 3R formula. And
Mhm.
so it's recognize, rewire, and regulate, and I think it's just something good to kind of
Mm.
keep in mind anytime, a trigger comes up or anytime something happens in your life. It's like, okay, recognize what's going on. I think that's a big step in awareness. I really believe awareness is
Mhm.
90% of transformation. So it's like just becoming aware of, like, what you're thinking or what that pattern is, or what that trigger is a huge step. And so many people are like get so upset. They're like, "Well, oh my god, I'm realizing I'm having all these bad thoughts. I'm realizing I'm having these patterns." I'm like, "Literally, congratulations. Like, you're actually you're so much further. You're so much further than like so many other people, just becoming aware of it, because so many people are just kind of running,
Mm.
those patterns or running those
Yeah.
thoughts on autopilot without even realizing it. So that's the first R, is recognize, and then and recognize what you want. And then rewire. So rewiring your mind, start redirecting your thoughts, start maybe doing your affirmations or thinking about things differently, even if it feels a little bit hard. But just know that you're, creating this new neural pathway, and it takes a little bit of repetition. So that's the second R. And then the third R is regulate. So then regulate your
Yeah.
nervous system, maybe take some deep breaths, do some other somatic exercises. So that's just a little, like, thing that I
That's
think
so
helps
important.
people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, just to kind of have a process to take them through. But yes, my podcast is called Inspired Delusions. And as I mentioned, my whole brand is being delusional and thinking big. And if you need motivation to do that, and remember that you literally are so inherently worthy of receiving everything that you want. It's a big pillar, of what we talk about in my podcast. So I do the podcast with my best friend, business partner, Kama. We have the podcast together. It's really good. It's very similar to you guys. Like, you guys giggling it's me and her, like, just giggle the whole time, and we'll also talk about serious stuff and also talk about mindset and manifestation the whole time. People say that's kind of like just chatting on the couch with
Yeah.
their besties.
Yeah.
So definitely listen to the podcast. You can find me on social media with my full government name, Olivia Rose Thomas. And yeah, I'm a
Love
coach
that.
if you want to work with me. But that's a little
Yeah.
bit about me.
Well, we're going to
Love it.
share all your information here. And thank you for all of the wisdom that you've shared. And those 3 R's, we're going to take them with us when we go to. And
Good.
I think what you said resonates with both of us so much. And I know a lot of listeners can feel into that and like know that you can manifest anything you want into your
Yeah.
reality today.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Listen, instant manifestation's real. And if it doesn't come in one day, that's okay. Sometimes the 3D has a little bit of a lag time.
Yeah.
Definitely don't give up if it doesn't come in a day, but you can. Listen, instant manifestation is so
Get
real.
delusional, right? Get
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
delusional.
Delusional. You can manifest anything in your mind.
Love it. Thank you
Totally.
so much.
Yeah.
You're so
Thanks,
welcome.
Olivia.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And we'll see you guys next time on the Hey Soul Sister podcast. Bye for now.
Bye for now.